The phone call came on a Tuesday. I remember that because Tuesday was my day for polishing the silver. Not that we had much silver, just Helen's old set. 6 forks, 6 spoons, 6 knives. A wedding gift from her mother. I polished it every week. It was a way to hold a conversation with my wife, even though she's been gone 7 years. The smell of the polish, the soft drag of the cotton cloth, the way the light caught in the curve of a spoon. It was our language now. I had a record playing. Sam Cooke. The sweet, clear sound of his voice filled the quiet house. It was a good sound. A clean sound. I was working on the last fork when the phone rang, its shrillness cutting right through the music. I didn't like the phone much. It rarely brought good news. Mostly it was a machine for requests. I wiped my hands on the apron I wore, a sturdy canvas thing Helen had bought me from my workshop years ago. I let it ring 3 times. That was my rule. If it was important, they'd wait. "Hello," I said. My voice was calm. "Dad? It's David, my son." His voice was rushed like always. A man perpetually late for his own life. "I know who it is," I said. I could hear the television in the background on his end. Some kind of game show. Shouting and buzzers. Chaos. "Look, I don't have a lot of time," he started. He never did. Time was a currency he was always spending on someone else. "Sharon and I were just going over the accounts." I said nothing. I just stood there in the quiet of my kitchen, the smell of lemon polish in the air. The fork was still in my hand. I could feel the intricate pattern of the handle against my palm. And, well, things are tight this month. You know how it is. The kids' summer camp fees are due, and the car needs new tires. It's always something. I knew how it was. I had lived how it is for 78 years. I had raised him through it. I had worked 2 jobs when he was a boy to make sure how it is never landed too hard on him. I waited. The plea was coming. It always did. It was a script we had been acting out for a decade. He would list his troubles. I would listen. He would pause. I would fill the silence with a promise to help. But this time, the pause was different. It was shorter, impatient. "Look, Dad," he said, and the tone shifted. The thin veneer of familial respect peeled away, revealing the raw metal of transaction beneath. "We appreciate the help. We do. But with everything going on, your monthly check just isn't enough anymore." There it was. Not a request, a complaint, a performance review, a failing grade. The game show on his end got louder. A woman screamed because she'd won a refrigerator. In the background, I heard my daughter-in-law, Sharon. Her voice was a sharp whisper, but the phone carried it clearly. "Just tell him. It's barely pocket change anyway. David, pocket change." Sam Cooke had finished his song. The only sound in my house was the gentle thump, thump, thump of the needle at the end of the record. It sounded like a tire heart. My monthly check. I had set up the transfer myself 5 years ago, after Helen passed. I thought it would make things easier for them. A little help. A gesture of love. A way to stay connected, to be a part of their lives, even from a distance. It was what was left from my pension after I paid my own bills. It was not a small amount. It was what I could give. "Dad, are you there?" David's voice was irritated now. My silence was an inconvenience. I looked at the fork in my hand. It was Helen's. It had served holiday meals and Tuesday night dinners. It had been held by my parents, by my children. It had history. It had weight. The money was just money. But the words had weight, too. "Isn't enough. Pocket change." They were words that took a whole life of work, of saving, of sacrifice, and tossed it onto a pile of loose coins. They were words that said, "Your contribution is insufficient." They were words that said, "You are insufficient. I'm here," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Distant, as if it were coming from across a long, empty room. "So, can you maybe add a little more this month? We're in a real bind." I did not get angry. The feeling that washed over me wasn't hot. It was cold. It was a chilling, clarifying cold. It was the quiet click of a lock seating into place. A door closing. It was the feeling of a final number being added to a long column. It was the feeling of some being totaled. "I understand," I said. And I did. For the first time, I truly, completely understood. I understood the nature of our relationship. I understood my place in their world. I was a utility, a line item in their budget, an ATM that was failing to dispense the required amount. Great. So you'll add some more? He asked, relieved. The problem was solved. The machine was back online. I did not answer his question directly. I said goodbye, David, and I hung up the phone. I didn't slam it down. I placed the receiver gently back into its cradle. The connection was severed. The silence of the house rushed back in, but it was different now. It wasn't the warm, familiar silence of my routine. It was a vast, clean, empty silence. The silence of a blank page. I stood there for a long time. The fork grew warm in my hand. My hand did not tremble, not even a little. I walked over to the record player and lifted the arm, stopping the rhythmic thumping. Then I walked into my living room and sat down in my chair. It's a big leather armchair, worn smooth over the decades. It holds my shape. It has always been a place of comfort, of rest. But now it felt like a command post, a place from which to see the battlefield clearly. I didn't think about David's bills. I didn't think about Sharon's casual cruelty. I thought about my father. He was a carpenter. He came up from Alabama during the Great Migration with nothing but a set of handmade tools and a belief that a man's worth was in the straightness of his cut and the squareness of his joint. He used to tell me, "Arthur, a man who doesn't respect your work doesn't respect you." The two are the same. My work had been dismissed as pocket change. I thought about the cookouts. My son and his friends, all with their fancy gas grills and their store-bought marinades. They'd laugh at my old charcoal smoker. They told me not to man the grill anymore, that my methods were too old-fashioned, too slow. I was relegated to a lawn chair on the periphery, watching them burn expensive cuts of meat. I was a guest at my own family tradition. I thought about the last time I tried to give my grandson, David's boy, a lesson on changing the oil in his car. David had interrupted. "Dad, just let the guys at the shop handle it. Nobody does this stuff themselves anymore." He'd hustled the boy away, leaving me standing in my own garage, a wrench in my hand and a lifetime of knowledge unspoken. My hands, which had rebuilt engines and fixed transmissions, were deemed obsolete. I thought about my 70th birthday. They threw a party. They invited all their friends. They played music I didn't know on speakers I couldn't operate. They served food I didn't particularly like. Near the end of the night, I overheard one of Sharon's friends ask her what I wanted for my birthday. "Oh, I don't know," Sharon had said with a laugh. "Peace and quiet, probably. He's easy. He doesn't really need anything. He doesn't really need anything." The assumption of my simplicity, the assumption that my world was small, my needs few, the assumption that I existed only in relation to them, a quiet, faded backdrop for their vibrant lives. It wasn't malice. I saw that clearly now, sitting in the stillness of my home. Malice requires thought. It requires seeing the other person as a person. This was something far more insulting. This was neglect, a casual, thoughtless, absolute invisibility. I was a piece of furniture that occasionally dispensed money. The cold clarity remained. It wasn't anger. Anger is a hot, messy emotion. It begs for a reaction, for a confrontation. This was different. This was a decision. It was the quiet, final click of a well-made box closing. It was the satisfying heft of a balance tool in my hand. It was alignment. I got up from the chair. My movements felt deliberate, steady. I went back to the kitchen. I didn't finish polishing the silver. That was a conversation with Helen, and this new business was mine alone. I opened a drawer and took out a small, leather-bound notebook. It was a gift from my granddaughter, Maya. She had given it to me for Christmas a few years back. "For your thoughts, Grandpa," she'd said. "They're important. Until now, I had never written a word in it." The pages were clean, crisp, empty. I found a pen, a good one with a heavy feel and a smooth flow of ink. I sat at my kitchen table, the table where I'd helped my children with their homework, where Helen and I had drunk a million cups of coffee. I opened the notebook to the first page. The house was perfectly silent. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, a clock my own father had built. I wrote one sentence on that first clean page. The account is closed. I looked at the words. My penmanship was still strong, steady. The letters were clear, defined. It wasn't the writing of a confused old man. It was the writing of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. I closed the notebook. The decision was made. The path was set. Now it was just a matter of walking it. I got up and went to the coffee maker. I was going to need a strong pot of coffee. Black. The work was about to begin. The work of reclaiming a life. The work of being seen. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. This was not unusual. My body has run on an old clock for decades. But this morning felt different. The air in the house felt lighter. I didn't turn on the radio. I savored the silence. I made my coffee, the ritual of comfort. The smell of the dark roast filled the kitchen. It was the smell of purpose. I drank the first cup standing by the window, watching the sky turn from inky black to a soft, bruised purple. I wasn't watching the dawn. I was planning my day. My first call was not to my son. It was to a man named Gerald Henderson. Mr. Henderson. He was a lawyer, a few years younger than me, a man I knew from church. He was on the board of deacons with me for a decade. He was a quiet, dignified man who wore starched shirts and always had a kind word. He specialized in wills and probate. He understood the final accounting of a life. I looked up his number in the church directory. I dialed. He answered on the second ring, his voice already awake and clear. Henderson, Gerald. It's Arthur Finch, I said. Arthur, good to hear your voice. Is everything all right? Everything is about to be, I said. I need some of your time. I need to make some changes. Substantial ones. There was a brief pause. I knew what he was probably thinking. That I was ill. That I had gotten bad news from a doctor. Of course, Arthur, he said, his voice gentle. My door is always open. Can you come by this morning? Say 9 o'clock. I'll be there, I said, and hung up. Next, I went to my study. It's a small room, little more than a closet, but it's where I keep my papers. The deed to the house. My military discharge papers from Vietnam. My pension statements. My bank records. Helen used to joke that it was my fortress of solitude. I pulled out the file, and it was a document I had signed 5 years ago, right after Helen's funeral. David had brought it to me. It was a power of attorney. Just in case, Daddy had said, to make things easier, so I can help manage your affairs if you ever can't. It had seemed sensible at the time. A practical step. Now it felt like a leash. I gathered everything. The bank statements showing the monthly transfers. The POA document. The title to the house. I put them in my old leather briefcase, the one I used to carry to the auto shop I managed for 30 years. It felt good to have it in my hand again. Solid. Purposeful. At 8:30, I was dressed. Not in my usual work jeans. I put on my Sunday suit. Gray wool. I put on a tie, a simple navy blue one. I shine my shoes. My father taught me that. You can tell a man's character by the shine on his shoes, he'd say. Today, my character needed to be impeccable. Mr. Henderson's office was downtown in a modest brick building. The air inside smelled of old paper and furniture polish. It was a quiet place. His secretary, a woman with kind eyes, led me straight back. Gerald stood up when I entered. He was a tall, slender man. He shook my hand firmly. Arthur, sit down. Coffee. I've had my share this morning. Thank you, Gerald, I said, taking the seat opposite his large wooden desk. He sat down and folded his hands. He just waited. He was a good listener. I opened my briefcase and laid the documents on his desk. I started with the power of attorney. First, I said, my voice even. I want to revoke this. Immediately, he picked it up and looked at it. He didn't ask why. He simply nodded. That is a simple matter. We can have the revocation drafted and filed today. It will be effective immediately upon David receiving notification. Good, I said. Next, I pushed the bank statements toward him. These transfers, they stop. Today, he glanced at them. Again, no judgment in his eyes. Just professional assessment. You'll need to go to your bank for that, Arthur. Close any joint accounts. Remove any authorized users from your personal accounts. I recommend opening a new account at a different branch or even a different bank and transferring your primary funds there. It creates a clean break. A clean break, I repeated. I like the sound of that. And the house, he asked, tapping the deed. The house, I said, taking a breath. I want to sell it. This time he did look up at me. A flicker of surprise. Arthur, that's your home. You and Helen built that place. Helen is gone, Gerald, I said, my voice softer. And it is no longer a home. It is an asset, a property, and I wish to liquidate it. He studied my face for a long moment. He was looking for grief, for anger, for confusion. I think all he saw was resolve. He nodded slowly. All right, Arthur. It's your property. I can recommend a good realtor. A woman who is discreet and efficient. I would appreciate that, I said. We spent the next hour going over the details. He drafted the POA revocation while I sat there. He made a call to the realtor. When I left his office, I had a plan. A series of steps. It felt good, like having a blueprint for a complex project. My next stop was the bank. It was the main branch downtown, a big, cold place with marble floors and high ceilings. I didn't go to my usual teller. I asked to see the branch manager. A young woman named Ms. Albright came out to meet me. She was sharp, professional. She led me to a glass-walled office. Mr. Finch, she said, how can I help you today? I told her exactly what I wanted. I wanted to close my joint checking account with my son. I wanted to remove him and his wife as authorized users on my savings account. I wanted to stop all automatic transfers. And I wanted to open a new Premier account with no one on it but me. She typed silently at her computer for a few minutes. I can do all of that for you, Mr. Finch. I just need to see your identification. I slid my driver's license across the desk. She looked at it, then back at me. There was no curiosity in her eyes. It was a transaction. I appreciated that. She printed out a series of forms. I signed them. My signature was firm. Each stroke of the pen felt like a nail being driven into a board. Solid. Secure. When it was done, she handed me a new debit card and a folder with my new account information. Your new account is active, Mr. Finch. I've transferred the balance from your old savings account. The joint checking account is now closed. Thank you, I said, standing up. Is there anything else? No, I said. That is all. Walking out of that bank, I felt lighter than I had in years. The sun was bright. The air was crisp. I had taken the first real steps. I had taken back control. When I got home, the house felt different. The air was still, but it was my stillness. The silence was my silence. I didn't go into the house right away. I went to the garage, my sanctuary. The smell of old leather from the driver's seat of my '68 Ford pickup, the scent of sawdust and oil. This was my place. Against the far wall was a large oak toolbox. My father had made it. He gave it to me when I got back from the war. Inside were his tools. Hand-forged chisels, wooden-handled screwdrivers, heavy, balanced hammers. Each one felt like an extension of my own hand. I had always told David, one day, this will all be yours. It was a promise. A legacy. I opened the lid. The tools lay nestled in their felt-lined compartments. I picked up a small block plane, its brass fittings gleaming. My father's initials were stamped into the wood. Slowly, methodically, I began to empty the toolbox. I took out each tool, one by one. I wiped it down with a clean, soft cloth. I checked the edge of each chisel, the head of each hammer. I handled them not as objects to be put away, but as objects to be used. I did not put them in another box. I cleared a long space on my workbench, and I laid them out in perfect order. Chisels by size, saws by type, hammers by weight. This was not a legacy to be passed down anymore. This was an arsenal to be deployed. These are my tools for my work. When the toolbox was empty, I stood back and looked at the workbench. It was beautiful, an array of potential, a history of competence. I closed the empty lid of the oak toolbox. The sound it made was hollow, final. I didn't push it back against the wall. I dragged it out into the middle of the garage floor. Tomorrow, I would take it apart. The wood was good oak. I could use it to build something. Something for myself. I went inside. The family photo was on the mantelpiece. It was from 2 Christmases ago. David, Sharon, their 2 young children, and me. They were all in the center, smiling brightly. I was standing slightly to the left, a little out of focus, wearing a sweater they had given me that was a size too big. I looked like an afterthought, a kindly neighbor who had wandered into the shot. I picked up the heavy silver frame. I looked at my own face. The smile was tired. The eyes were distant. I didn't recognize that man anymore. I didn't smash the frame. I didn't tear the photo. I simply opened the back, took the picture out, and turned it around so the blank white side was facing out. Then I put it back in the frame and set it back on the mantelpiece. A blank space where a family used to be. It seemed right. It seemed honest. That night, I slept a deep, dreamless sleep. It was the sleep of a man who had done a good day's work. The house was quiet around me. It was no longer waiting for anything. Neither was I. The silence held for 4 days. It was a good, solid silence. I spent the time in my garage. I took apart the old oak toolbox, board by board. I was careful not to damage the wood. I sanded each piece, feeling the grain come alive under my hands. I was thinking I would build a new bookshelf. For my books, not for anyone else's. The realtor Mr. Henderson recommended came by. A no-nonsense woman named Mrs. Gable. She walked through the house, her eyes missing nothing. She didn't talk about memories or family. She talked about curb appeal and market value. I liked her immediately. We signed the papers, and by the end of the day, a for sale sign was hammered into my front lawn. The red and white of it looked stark and final against the green grass I had mowed for 40 years. On the 5th day, the silence broke. It started with a text message. My phone, which had been resting peacefully on the kitchen counter, buzzed. I picked it up. It was from Sharon. Art, did you forget to transfer the money? The mortgage payment is due. Art. Not Dad. Not Arthur. Art. A name for a handyman or a stranger. And the question, not, are you okay? But where's the money? It was exactly what I had expected. It was a confirmation written in cold, blue light. I looked at the message. I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction. Just a quiet sense of correctness. My diagnosis had been accurate. I pressed my thumb to the screen and deleted the message. I did not reply. An hour later, the phone buzzed again. A text from David. Dad, what's going on? Sharon said the money's not there. Call me. More direct. Still no concern. Just confusion and annoyance. The machine was not working. He needed to know why. I deleted it. The phone rang 10 minutes later. David's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring. I watched it vibrate on the countertop, a frantic, buzzing insect. It went to voicemail. A minute later, I listened to the message. His voice was tight. Dad, pick up. This isn't funny. We were counting on that money. Call me back as soon as you get this. I deleted the voicemail. I went back to my garage and started measuring the oak boards for my new bookshelf. The sound of the tape measure snapping back was crisp and satisfying. The calls and texts escalated over the next 2 days. They became a kind of background noise to my new, quiet life. David's tone shifted from annoyed to angry. Sharon's shifted from demanding to accusatory. Dad, I'm serious. What the hell is going on? Are you getting my messages? Pick up the damn phone. Arthur, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it's incredibly selfish. We have bills. This is affecting your grandchildren. That one almost made me laugh. My grandchildren, the ones who barely knew my name. The ones who were taught that Grandpa's garage was dirty and his stories were boring. They never once asked if I was all right. They never once suggested they had done something wrong. Their worldview was so complete, so hermetically sealed, that the only possible explanation for my behavior was that I was being senile or cruel or manipulative. It never occurred to them that I was simply responding to their own actions. That silence was the logical consequence of being told you are not enough. My silence was not a punishment. It was a boundary. It was a locked door. They had been rattling the handle for days, and they were starting to realize the key they had always used no longer fit. I had Mr. Henderson's office forward the power of attorney revocation to David's address by a certified mail. I imagined the moment he would have to sign for it, the confusion on his face as he read the legal language, the slow dawning that a power he had taken for granted was gone. Each deleted message, each unanswered call, was another brick in the wall I was building. Not a wall to keep them out, but a wall to keep me in, to protect the new, quiet space I was clearing for myself. The space where my own thoughts could be heard. The space where my own worth was not up for debate. One afternoon, as I was sanding the edge of a shelf, the phone rang again. A different number. I didn't recognize it. I almost let it go, but something made me answer. Hello. Grandpa. The voice was young, hesitant. It was Maya, my granddaughter, my son's daughter from his first marriage. A smart, quiet girl who was away at college studying art history. My heart did something it hadn't done in a week. It softened. Maya, little bird. How are you? I'm okay, Grandpa, she said. I got a weird call from Dad. He and Sharon are kind of freaking out. He said you're not answering your phone. I'm here, I said simply. There was a pause. I could hear her take a breath. He was yelling about money, and something about you being selfish. It didn't sound like you. I'm making some changes, sweetheart, I told her. My voice was gentle. Just some changes in my life. I expected her to press, to take her father's side, to ask me to just call him and smooth things over. That's what everyone else always did. But she didn't. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, okay, just that one word. Okay, then she added, I want to make sure you were all right. That's all there it was. The question no one else had thought to ask. Are you all right? A question that sees a person, not a problem. A question that comes from love, not from need. A lump formed in my throat. I swallowed it down. I'm more than all right, Maya. I'm fine, good, she said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. I was thinking about you the other day. I was walking in the rain, and I remembered that time you took me out to the garage when I was little just to listen to the sound of the rain on the tin roof. You made us hot chocolate. You said it was the best music in the world. The memory was so clear, so sharp. A small girl with big eyes, cupping a mug in her tiny hands, listening with me in the quiet, safe dark of my garage. A moment I thought I was the only one who remembered. I remember that, I said, my voice a little thick. I miss that, she said softly. And then her voice dropped even lower, hesitant but clear. They don't always listen, Grandpa. They get so busy. I know they love you, but they forget to see you sometimes. I'm sorry. 2 words, spoken from a place of pure empathy. An apology for a crime she did not commit. It was a validation of my entire life's quiet complaint. It was a cool hand on a fevered brow. It's not your place to be sorry, little bird, I said. But thank you. Are you really selling the house? She asked. The realtor's sign. Of course. News travels. I am, I said. It's too big for one old man. Time for something new? Okay, she said again. That quiet acceptance. Well, wherever you go, can I still come visit? To listen to the rain? The tears I had refused to shed for my son's cruelty now pricked at the corners of my eyes for his daughter's kindness. Maya, I said, my voice full. The door is always open for you. No matter where it is, we talked for a little while longer. About her classes, about a painting she was studying, about nothing and everything. When we hung up, the silence in the house felt different again. It was no longer empty. It was filled with the echo of her voice, the warmth of her memory. She was the one who saw, the one who remembered. I went back to my workbench. I looked at the pieces of the old toolbox, sanded and ready. I wasn't just building a bookshelf anymore. I was building a future, and now I knew who to build part of it for. My conversation with Maya solidified my resolve. It was like a surveyor checking his lines and finding them true. The path I was on was the correct one. It was no longer just about leaving a toxic situation behind. It was about moving toward a genuine one. The sale of the house moved faster than I expected. Mrs. Gable was a miracle worker. A young family, eager to get into the neighborhood, made an offer well above asking price. They didn't even ask for repairs. They loved the vintage charm, she said. They loved the big yard and the solid construction. They loved the work of my hands, even if they didn't know it. I signed the papers in Mr. Henderson's office. The stroke of the pen felt like a final amen. I had 30 days to vacate, 30 days to dismantle a life. I started in the attic. Boxes of old clothes. School project from David's childhood. Once treasured, now just dusty relics of a boy I no longer recognized. Holiday decorations. I was ruthless. I kept a few things. Helen's wedding dress, sealed in a preservation box. My army uniform. A box of photographs from a time when the smiles were real. Everything else, I arranged for a charity to pick up. The process was not sad. It was liberating. Each box that left the house made the rooms feel bigger, the air lighter. I was shedding a skin. I also moved on my other assets. I had a small portfolio of stocks, blue-chip companies I had invested in slowly over 40 years. It had grown into a respectable sum. I called my broker, a man I'd only ever spoken to on the phone. "Sell it all," I said. "Arthur, the market is a bit volatile right now. Are you sure you want to liquidate the entire position?" He asked, his voice laced with professional concern. "I'm sure," I said. "I have a different kind of investment in mind. The money from the house sale and the stock portfolio was wired to my new bank account." When I looked at the balance online, the number was staggering. It was a lifetime of careful work, of living below my means, of saying no to myself so I could say yes to others. It was a testament to a long, disciplined life, and it was all mine. The feeling was not glee. It was a profound sense of gravity, of responsibility. This was my power, my voice, and I had to decide what it was going to say. The inevitable confrontation came a week before I was scheduled to move out. I was packing books in the living room when a car screeched to a halt in my driveway. I knew who it was before I even saw the car. Only David drove like that. A moment later, someone was banging on my front door. Not knocking, banging, with a closed fist. "Dad, open this door. I know you're in there." A neighbor called and said, "There's a moving truck here." I took a slow breath. I placed the book I was holding into the box. I closed the flaps. I stood up, my joints cracking a little. I was not afraid. I was not angry. I was ready. I walked to the door and opened it. David stood on my porch, his face red, his suit jacket rumpled. He looked frantic, cornered. Sharon was behind him, standing by the car, her arms crossed, a look of pure fury on her face. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted, pushing past me into the foyer. He stopped and stared at the stacks of boxes, the bare walls, the empty spaces where furniture used to be. "A for sale sign? Moving trucks? You're selling our home." There was that word again. "Our." I stood in the doorway, blocking him from coming any further. My posture was straight. My hands were relaxed at my sides. "My home, David," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through his anger like a sharp blade. "I'm selling my home." "Your home? This is the house I grew up in. This is my kids' grandparents' house. You can't just sell it. You don't have a right." "The deed is in my name," I said calmly. "The bank account it was paid from was in my name. The sweat that built it was mine and your mother's. I have every right." He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing. He was trying to process it. He was like a man trying to use a key on a door that had been replaced by a solid wall. The rules he had always operated under no longer applied. "Why?" he finally sputtered. "Why are you doing this? To punish us? Because we asked for a little more help? Is that it? You're going to throw away our entire family over a little money?" And there it was, the complete and utter lack of understanding. The self-centered narrative where he was the victim of my irrational cruelty. I decided to give him the truth. Not for his sake, for mine. To say out loud. To make it real. "It was never about the money, son," I said, and I saw him flinch when I called him son. "The money was just the symptom. The disease was that you stopped seeing me." I took a step toward him. He actually took a step back. "I was on the phone with you, David." I continued, my voice low and steady. "The day you called. The day you said my help wasn't enough. I stood right here in this hallway. And I heard you. But I heard something else, too. I heard Sharon in the background. She laughed, and she said, "Might as well be pocket change anyway." I looked past him through the open door, and my eyes met Sharon's. I saw a flicker of panic in her face. She remembered. I brought my gaze back to David. His face had gone pale. "I heard it," I said. And in that moment, I understood everything. I'm not your father. I am an inconvenience. I'm a line item. I am pocket change. And you know what? You were right. It wasn't enough. My contribution wasn't enough for you. But the deeper truth, the one you can't see, is that your respect was not enough for me. He was speechless. The blustering anger was gone, replaced by a stunned, hollow look. The truth, delivered so plainly, had left no room for argument. "I've spent the last 7 years since your mother died being an afterthought," I said. "A convenience. A reliable check. A silent fixture at holidays. I am done. I'm not angry. I'm not punishing you. I am resigning. I am retiring from the job of being your father, because it turns out the position was already vacant. I was just the last one to know." He finally found his voice, but it was just a whisper. "Dad, we didn't mean it like that. It doesn't matter how you meant it," I said. "It matters how it was. And now, it is over." I looked at the boxes, the empty room. "This house is sold. My assets are my own. The life I have left is my own. You will not be a part of it. You can't do that," he said, the desperation creeping back into his voice. "We're family. Family is a verb, David," I said. "It's something you do, not something you are. You haven't been doing it for a long time." I stepped back into the doorway. I put my hand on the door. "The account is closed," I said, repeating the words from my journal. And then I closed the door. I didn't slam it. I closed it gently, firmly. The latch clicked into place with a quiet, definite sound. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood for a moment. I could hear him on the other side, just standing there. Then I heard his footsteps walking away. The car door slammed. The engine roared to life, and tires squealed as he sped away. And then silence. A pure, clean, absolute silence. I had spoken my truth. I had closed the door. I was free. The last piece of the plan was the most important. It was the purpose for all this upheaval. It was the statement I wanted my life to make. 2 days before I moved out, I had a meeting. It wasn't with a banker or a lawyer. It was with Pastor Michael from my church, First Community Baptist. We met in his office, a small, cluttered room that smelled of old books and coffee. Pastor Michael was a good man, younger than me, with a fire in his heart and a weariness in his eyes. The weariness came from trying to keep a small church with a big heart afloat in a world that didn't have much time for either. "Arthur," he said, shaking my hand warmly. "Good to see you. What can I do for you?" I sat down and got right to the point. "Pastor, what's the outstanding balance on the church's mortgage?" He blinked, surprised by the question. He leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Oh, Arthur, that old ghost." He ran a hand over his face. "Too much. We make the payment every month, but the interest, it feels like we're treading water. We're looking at another 15 years. The principal is, well, it's a little over $872,000. He said the number like a man confessing a sin. It was a weight on his soul, a weight on the whole congregation. It was the reason the roof repairs were always patched instead of replaced. It was the reason the youth programs were always running on a shoestring. It was a chain that kept the church tethered to the past. I opened my old leather briefcase. I took out a single piece of paper and slid it across the desk. It was a cashier's check. Pastor Michael picked it up. He looked at it. His eyes widened. He looked at the name of the payee, First Community Baptist Church. He looked at the amount. He looked back at me, his mouth slightly open. "Arthur, what is this?" he whispered. "That," I said, "is the sound of a chain breaking." The check was for the full amount. $872,451.18. I had called the bank that held the note myself to get the exact payoff amount. I don't understand," he stammered. "Where, how?" "I sold my house." I explained calmly. And some other things. I'm restructuring my estate, but Arthur, this is your life savings. This is everything. No, I said, and I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. Everything is my health, my faith, the love of my wife, which I still carry, the kindness of my granddaughter. This is just money, and money is meant to be used, not just had. For 40 years, this church has been my family. It's where I married Helen. It's where I baptized my son. It's where I buried my wife. It's where men and women who respect me shake my hand every Sunday. It's where I'm not invisible. I leaned forward. My son told me recently that the help I was giving him wasn't enough. He was right. I was investing in a failing business. So I've decided to move my assets. I'm investing in my home. This church is my home. This community is my family. I want to pay off the mortgage. Tears were welling in Pastor Michael's eyes. He stared at the check in his hand as if it were a burning coal. I can't accept this, he said, his voice thick. It's too much. It's not a gift to you, Pastor, I said gently. It's a gift to us, to the congregation, to the future. Think of what this church can do, free and clear. Think of the new roof, the youth center, the outreach programs. Think of the legacy. This is not an ending. It's a beginning. He looked at me, and the tears finally spilled over, running down his cheeks. He wasn't a man who cried easily. He stood up, came around the desk, and pulled me into a fierce hug. He smelled of coffee and old paper. God bless you, Arthur Finch, he choked out. God bless you, he already has, I said. He gave me a long life and a clear mind to know what to do with it. At the end, I left the check with him. I also gave him another, smaller one. This is for trust, I told him. For Maya Finch's education. Whatever she wants to study, wherever she wants to go. I want you and Mr. Henderson to administer it. Keep it quiet. She doesn't need to know where it came from until she's done. He just nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. I walked out of the church into the bright afternoon sun. I felt 10 feet tall. I had taken a lifetime of being told I was not enough and turned it into a statement of more than enough. I had taken a pocket change and built a cathedral. My new life began in a small, 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. It overlooked a park. The building was clean, quiet, and filled with people my own age. I had a small balcony, just big enough for a chair and a small table. Moving in was easy. I didn't have much. My books, my tools, my records, my father's clock, my chair, the essentials. I set up a small workbench in the second bedroom. I finished the bookshelf I had started and filled it with my books. I bought a new record player and a pair of good speakers. The first record I played in my new home was John Coltrane, A Love Supreme. It felt appropriate. My days found a new rhythm. It was a quiet, steady beat. I woke with the sun. I made my coffee and sat on my balcony, watching the world wake up. I read the newspaper. I took a walk in the park. I spent most of my afternoons at the church. With the mortgage gone, a new energy had been unleashed. I volunteered, using the tools from my father's collection to make repairs. I fixed the squeaky pew in the third row. I planed the sticky door to the fellowship hall. I built new shelves for the food pantry. My hands were useful again. My knowledge was valued. When I spoke, people listened. I was Arthur Finch, the man who fixed things, the man who had a steady hand and a good eye, the man who had liberated his church. I was seen. I was whole. I had dinner with old friend from the VFW hall. I played dominoes at the barber shop. The sharp crack of the tiles on the wooden table was a good sound. The conversations were real. We talked about old times, about politics, about the aches in our joints. We didn't talk about our children's mortgages. I was not lonely. I was solitary. There's a difference. Loneliness is a lack. Solitude is a presence. The presence of oneself. I enjoyed my own company. One evening, I sat down at my small kitchen table and opened my leather-bound journal. I had not written in it since that first day. I turned to a new page. There's a difference between a bank and a well, I wrote. A bank has rules. You make deposits, you make withdrawals. The accounts must be balanced. A well is supposed to be for everyone. A source of life, given freely. My family treated me like a bank, but expected me to be a well. They made withdrawals without ever making a deposit of love or respect. They were angry when the bank closed. They never understood that a well, untended, can run dry, or that a man can decide to cap it and build a new one in a place where people are grateful for the water. I closed the book. The thought was complete. Months passed. Autumn turned to winter. The first snow fell, dusting the trees in the park with white. One afternoon, a letter arrived. It had been forwarded from the church. The handwriting on the envelope was my son's. I held it for a long time. I almost threw it away. But curiosity, a faint echo of the father I used to be, made me open it. It was a single page, written on simple, line paper. "Dad," it began, "I don't know if you'll even read this. I don't blame you if you don't. I have been doing a lot of thinking. About that day. About everything before it. You were right. About all of it. I never saw you. I saw a solution to my problems. I saw a safety net. I took your love and your help for granted, and I taught my wife and my children to do the same. It was easier than being a man and handling my own affairs. It was easier than seeing the person I had become. There is no excuse for what I said or for what Sharon said. There is no excuse for the years of neglect. The word that comes to mind is shame. I am ashamed. I am sorry. Not because I want your money. We are selling our house, the big one we couldn't afford. We're downsizing. I'm taking a second job. I'm finally growing up at 45. I am sorry for not respecting you, for not seeing you. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I heard you. Finally, I heard you. I miss my father. I hope one day I can earn the right to call him again. David." I read the letter twice. It was the letter I had waited a decade to receive. An apology without a request attached. An acknowledgement of my reality. I folded it carefully and placed it on my desk. I did not pick up the phone. I did not write back. The pain he had caused was a deep wound. A letter was a bandage, not a cure. Healing would take time, and it would happen on my terms. In my time. The door to that relationship was not locked and bolted. It was not wide open. It was cracked, just a little, to let a sliver of light in. I went to my chair and sat down. I put on a record, B.B. King. The mournful, powerful notes of his guitar filled my quiet apartment. The sun was setting, painting the snow in the park outside in shades of orange and purple. My life was my own. It was quiet. It was dignified. It was enough. I was enough.